is Tori Refutation, and the claim that I'm responding to is the Bible is a reliable source of information. The opponent's secondary claims were the text is accurate through historical parallels that can be proven, and the Bible being distributed is translated from the original because it has been transcribed painstakingly accurately. My response to the claim is that the Bible is not a reliable source, thus meaning that Christianity is non-legitimate. My response to the first secondary claim is that the text lacks information on the history of the creation of the earth, which would be my counterclaim. At first, there's a strange error in the 7 days of creation. On day 1, it says, "Then God said, let there be light, and there was light. And God saw that light was good. And God separated the light from the darkness, and God called the light day, and the darkness he called night. And there was evening, and there was morning one day." And that was in the book of Genesis, chapter 1, verse 3 to 5. And then we move to day 4, and it says, "And God made the 2 great lights, the greater light to govern the day, and the lesser light to govern the night. He made the stars also." And that was in Genesis chapter 1, verse 16. And basically, day 4 is when they created the sun, the moon, and the stars. So if they made that on the 4th day, then what did they use for light for the first 3 days? Then next is, how many days is 6 days? The Bible states, "And God saw everything that he made, and behold, it was very good. And there was evening, and there was morning, the 6th day. Thus the heavens and the earth were finished, and all host of them." And that was in Genesis chapter 1, verse 31 to chapter 2, verse 1. It continues to explain how earth and everything in it came to be, but not a word of how the rest of the universe was developed. Only how the earth was created in 6 days. Just to be clear, the Genesis was written in Hebrew, and according to a website where priests answer Christians about the Bible to kids, they said in their language, a day, which was yom in Hebrew, could mean a 24-hour day, daytime, today, forever, continually, or an undetermined amount of time. So basically, 6 days can mean anything, because it was written in Hebrew and it had a whole bunch of meanings on what a day could be. Then to my response to the secondary claim, well, the second secondary claim, it says the opponent's I said that the opponent's secondary claim does not support the main claim at all. And these are my evidence challenges. When my opponent explains how writers stay committed to making the text painstakingly accurate to the original Bible, his point was that a regular Bible that is in the hands of a Christian are accurate to the original. This statement is false for 2 reasons. According to an article called The Biblical Canon, the Bible has been rewritten to keep up with the modern day language, or it has been revised in order to be more soft, for instance, for children, for black women, different ethnic groups, etc. So even if, so basically it has been rewritten and revised. And then I said, even if a copy of the Bible was 100% accurate to the original, it doesn't mean that the original itself is a reliable source of information. It only means that the copy is legitimate to the original. That said does not help the main claim. Then I said, my opponent stated in his third support in his second secondary claim that modern scholars have considered other writers of the first rank. This statement does not prove Christianity being legitimate. My opponent said that we take what Plato has with 7 manuscripts as fact. Why can't we take the New Testament, which has 24,970 manuscripts as facts? A question like this is simply another way of saying, if we claim 7 manuscripts from Plato as facts, then we should be able to take the New Testament 24,970 manuscripts as fact as well. Thus, this claims to be a policy claim and no longer supports the main claim. So in my conclusion, it almost seems similar to the Bible seems similar to a bad persuasive essay. The Bible lacks important information and evidence to support, leaving more questions than certainty for the reader. Because of this, you can hardly call the information reliable, or in this case, legitimate.
Vocally, you do a nice job delivering the presentation. I think you could use a little bit more eye contact with the audience. Sometimes we get the same thing that's going on here where people are reading something instead of talking to the audience. However, you read it nicely, so that helps quite a bit. I like the counterclaim that you have at the beginning, although it seems a little bit broad to suggest that everything is going to be disproven in your speech. I think that's perhaps taking on almost as big a burden as the advocate was taking and saying, well, this proves everything. So I think maybe that's not a good standard for you to use. I like the idea of the criticisms, though, that you picked out, the challenges on the early point with inconsistencies in the story of creation. That's okay, and I especially like the fact on that the original is in Hebrew, where the language has multiple meanings, which means that the inferences that we're going to be drawing from it are going to be vastly different, and the advocate is asking us to accept this as being accurate, but we don't know which part is accurate. That's the way I think that you want to explain that argument. It could be accurate that it's talking about 6 days, 24-hour days, or 6 days, 20,000 epochs, 20 million years, who knows what's going on there. And I think that suggests that there's a problem in describing its accuracy as a historical record. That's an okay point, although that's mostly focused, for example, on the Old Testament stuff. On the second part, where you're making the argument about it being rewritten, I like the examples that you have about the different ways in which it's been adjusted. That's okay. The best argument that you have, though, is that the fact that it has fidelity to the original doesn't prove that the original is, in fact, accurate. It only proves that all the subsequent copies have been accurate to what the original was. But we don't know how accurate the original actually was. Then you kind of got, I think, off on a different tangent, talking about this idea that we should, that it's a policy claim here, and therefore you can't use it to advance the point. I think that you're missing the meaning of the word should in this particular case. It's an evaluative use of the word should here. In essence, if we should evaluate Plato and Aristotle's works as being accurate and representative of what was going on based on manuscripts that consist of only 7 copies, then the 24,000 copies or 24,000 variations or texts that are used for the New Testament, for instance, would suggest an even greater degree of accuracy. That's not really a policy claim, even though it does use the word should. In essence, it's an argument that says that they match up well. But I think the argument that you made beforehand is the one that applies here, and that is that it's just fidelity to the text does not necessarily mean accuracy. And I don't know if you heard the earlier speech where they talked about some of the things that are in the text which seem to run contrary to our expectations of what the laws of nature are and that sort of thing. And I think that would be a good challenge to make at that point. All right, thank you all very much. You guys have a good weekend.